Welcome back into the Sports Source. We're talking football here, and it's brought to you by El Chico. Dine in, take out, or get the best Tex-Mex food in East Tennessee right on their patio. It's up to you. Not your standard Mexican food, folks. These guys have been serving up unique Tex-Mex flavors in North Knoxville for more than 30 years. El Chico, right at 116 Cedar Lane. That's just off the Merchants Drive exit in North Knoxville. El Chico, check them out. I really like that place. Since I lived out there, as soon as I got out of college, 1.5 million years ago. El Chico. All right. What we're doing is we're ranking the must improves, the needs improves, and the want to improve. So really, it's just what we're doing here is the three next guys on the list. What are the three most important positions that need to be improved from this point forward? We've got tight ends, receivers, running backs, special teams, defensive line, and secondary are on the desk here. They're not on the board, but we can put them on the board. Where are we going next? What needs to improve? What's the fourth most important position that has to be better for Tennessee to get to 6 wins this year?
Sort of my alternate choice for the top group would have been the secondary. I think you've got to get better there. I think they sort of underachieved, I would say, at that group anyway, and then you lose Bryce Thompson on top of that. At safety, they need to get better from last year. So I think that's a position group you need to improve if this team's going to be any good.
Okay.
I would totally agree. Last year, the pass coverage over the middle was not great, let's say. So what they do at the nickel position in the defensive backfield to go along with replacing Bryce Thompson, who could have played a role in helping with that. So secondary, I think, absolutely has to be better. Mm-hmm. You're also going to be playing in games with high scoring. So what can your secondary do? I would add defensive line to that conversation because pass rush to help be disruptive. So secondary absolutely has to be on the list.
Jimmy, you agree with secondary, or would you go somewhere else?
I do. I agree with secondary.
Okay, so secondary's in this. We get quarterback, offensive line, linebacker are the must improve. First one of the needs to improve is secondary. Where else are we going?
I would go defensive line next.
I would too. And I actually think the defensive line, I'm probably more confident in them improving because they've got, 5 seniors that came back on that defensive line. I don't think any of them's a great player, but I think they can be decent players. So I would go defensive line, and I do think they have the ability, certainly, to improve there.
Well, I think you just have, basically just a question of numbers. You've at least got some bodies there, so you have to feel a little bit better. Ryan, would you agree defensive line's next?
I agree. That group didn't play very well, and let's not forget they have some known commodities. I like that group, but they didn't really have a defensive line coach for the last half of the 2020 season. So there was clearly some development they might have missed out on from Jeremy Pruitt just having to oversee that group in addition to everything else. Yep. So I think a good spring for that group is a must.
Okay, so that leaves us. If we can get the ground, there we go. You got special teams, tight ends, receivers, and running backs is the last one of them. What's the most important position there that needs to improve over last year for Tennessee to get to 6 wins?
I've got receivers. And one reason I have that is because of this offense. Yep. This offense requires that your receivers are productive. It requires that they get open and catch the football and do those things and runs after the yards after catch. So I think in this offense, and I thought the receivers, I thought they had too many talented young receivers that either weren't productive or didn't get on the field. And I just think that's an area where they must get better.
Or need to get better?
Not need to get better, sorry.
I agree. If we talk about the potential of the offense, then that can still come back to, like Jalen Hyatt was mentioned earlier, and then those other freshmen. We played some last year, but not a whole lot. Bayless Jones coming back, ton of speed. So if quarterback's going to get better, the receivers I would say that they're going to have to improve from where they were a year ago, replacing Josh Palmer, but there's still some depth and there's still plenty of speed.
Do you agree?
I agree. I think it's because it's so important in this offense, and again, some young talent that needs to get better because they didn't get to do much last year or didn't show what they could do. So second-year players need to step up, and that's something we can definitely see in the spring. We've seen that before. You need to see it this year.
Okay, there's our listing then of the must improves. Go that way. Must improve: quarterback, offensive line, linebacker need to improve, secondary, defensive line, and receivers. And then special teams, tight ends there because it's a small group. They don't have much impact at Tennessee ever, depending on it seems regardless of the offense. You don't see the tight end have a big role in Tennessee's offense. Special teams, tight ends, running backs there at the bottom of the list. Although, as we said earlier, you need improvement across the board. When you're 3-7, you don't really feel good about any positions. I mean, I've had some people say, well, you've got talent because of Evans. I've had people tell me, well, I feel good about running back. I don't. What are you talking about? What have you seen So in terms of positions to feel good about, you're even changing your kicker this year. I don't know, even though you've got 3 spots down there at the bottom that would be want to improve, I don't know if there's anything you really feel good about on this team. Is there?
Not much.
No.
Not with
No.
great conviction, no.
I can't remember ever saying that. And we've discussed this in other ways on the show in the last few weeks, and that is this the worst the roster has been? Is this the worst inheritance that a coach has come in here and gotten? And I think that's another way of looking at it. Can you remember one of these previous teams when Butch got here or when Jeremy Pruitt got here where you said, yeah, there is nothing you feel good about? I mean, there was always an issue, an area at least, where you said, well, you got some talent here, and maybe you can do something here. There really isn't anything you feel good about that is proven on this list.
I think a couple of the groups that we put in the need and must groups are talent-filled groups. You've got the offensive line that I think has some talent. The defensive line obviously has a lot of experience. The secondary has some talent. Those guys just haven't put it together. So some positions you feel better than others, but it's clearly not a. It's a 3-7 team last year for a reason. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of having talent, you're a recruiting guy. I think you look at it and see talent based on potential.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what we've seen, though,
Sure.
I mean, I don't know that Cade Mays had the year last year that people expect Cade Mays to have the impact he had. So there really aren't. I mean, To'o wasn't as good last year, but he's gone anyway. Even if he came back, I don't know that there's any guys where I'd say, yeah, that's. Well, let me ask it that way then. Who do you think, if you had to say, yeah, he'll be all SEC? Is there anybody on this team right now that you'd say, yeah, he'll be? There's odds are he'll be all SEC.
No.
No.
Which goes
That
back
speaks to
the-
your talent
Yeah. No,
in terms of proven.
Yeah.
What's proven.
It's what got the last staff in the 3-7 situation they were in. They're 5 stars and high 4-star players. Aside from Toa really had not lived up to the hype. So Bryce Thompson at times, but yeah, you don't have a lot of star potential on this team. They need to change that pretty quickly.
In terms of, go ahead, Josh.
Well, I would just say the guys that we would have said, hey, he has a good chance to be all SEC. Go check out the 24/7 Sports transfer portal rankings. You know, that's a big impact here, which we've talked about here on this show. But if you had Henry To'o or Eric Gray, we'd be talking about, hey, if they do make a leap with this staff, then yeah, I could absolutely see it. You don't have as many of those players. I think Tyler Barron has that kind of potential. I think Jalen High has that potential, right? And Cade Mays, who we mentioned, they have it. But this is all potential that we're talking about. You don't have Trey Smith coming back where you say that guy is all SEC.
Yeah, and as I think you mentioned it earlier, you're going to have somebody that pops that we didn't expect to pop. And I think when you look at what Heupel did on offense at Missouri, where he went in and had a bunch of 3 stars and had them playing like 5 stars in terms of the production and numbers, I think there will be some guys that we say, oh, okay, well, we didn't see that coming in, but it's going to be a product of his system. My fear on defense is that I don't know, you're not even going to be able to gin up the numbers in a good way to where you're saying, oh, he's much better than we thought. Defensively, it may be the opposite, that you may have some talent, but because of the offense they're paired with, it's not going to be able to even come close to its potential, would be my fear. In terms of, we got a couple minutes here, in terms of new coaches coming in with new systems, is this the most interesting with Heupel's system in terms of what you've covered here at Tennessee? And Jimmy, you've covered more than anybody here. It's a nice way of saying you're old.
Mature.
Yeah, mature. Is this the one most interesting for you to get a look at and,
Yes.
and see for the first time? I remember when Butch Jones
Yep.
came in, we all said, oh, okay, spread. We haven't seen that here at Tennessee, but this, different beast.
It is. To me, it is. It's the most intriguing, and in part because we don't know who's going to be the quarterback. That's part of it. But I do think the pitching it, throwing it all over the place, we've not seen that in Neyland Stadium by any Tennessee offense. We've seen zone read. We did see Peyton Manning throwing it quite a bit, but they typically did it not spreading it all over the field. And they always seem to have a tight end, even though the tight end never caught a pass. But I do think it's interesting to me to see what he's going to try to milk out of this offense.
Yeah, I mean, to see receivers lined up outside literally to the boundary is going to be something to get used to. I also think we've seen some hurry up here, but I don't think it's going to be anything to the degree that this guy runs.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big change to me that I think fans are going to be eager to see is what does 3 plays a minute look like when you actually see it in action. And I think people are going to be surprised too. This offense is a little more balanced than you might think.
Very good. Ryan Callahan, Jimmy Himes, Josh Ward, thanks to them. Thanks to you. See you next week right back here on The Sports Source.